hip hop family. Back to the Hip Hop Scholar podcast. I am the host, Melanie, the Hip Hop Scholar. Today on the Hip Hop Scholar podcast, we're heading to Oklahoma to sit with an artist who is redefining what it means to be multi-talented and deeply rooted in the culture. We have Evrgreen. She is a triple threat in the truest sense. Singer, songwriter, and screenwriter. But titles alone can't contain her artistry. She's a creator whose voice can move you to stillness, whose pen can build worlds, and whose presence embodies the kind of authenticity that's often missing in today's industry. Evrgreen's music isn't just heard, it's felt. It pulls from the soil of her Oklahoma roots, mixes in the honesty of lived experience, and blooms into the melodies that stay with you. Whether she's laying down vocals that resonate deep in your chest or crafting scripts that unfold like a song you can see, Evrgreen moves with intentionality, making art that lasts. Her journey reflects the heart of what we honor here at the Hip Hop Scholar, the intersection of culture, craft, and courage. In an era where many chase trends, Evrgreen builds timelessness. She represents the voice of an artist who refuses to be put in a box, blending genres, mediums, and emotions into something uniquely her own. Today, we're celebrating her vision, her creativity, and her dedication to telling stories that matter. This is more than just an interview. It's a conversation about legacy, creativity without boundaries, and the kind of inspiration that pushes the culture forward. So tap in and turn it up because this episode is about to be one for the books. So let's give Evrgreen her flowers and enjoy every moment of it. So we welcome Evrgreen. Yes.
I love it. That caught me off guard. I love it though. I love it. It was giving Grammy. It was. Yeah.
Speaking that into existence, manifest that queen.
Come on.
Absolutely. How are you today, dear?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm so just honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your platform. It's actually always been a dream of mine to be on a podcast. So when you reached out to me, I was like, oh, it's happening. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to have you and honored to have you as well. And inspired even too, because when I did reach out to you, this was after looking at a few videos of yourself singing. And not just singing, but I mean that the sounds of inspiration. I know you're from Oklahoma. And so how did your environment and community kind of shape the sound of your writing and your music? Like, how does that connect to you growing up in Oklahoma?
Yeah, so it's so interesting because I consider myself an Okie. I've lived here the majority of my life, but my family and I was actually born in Zimbabwe in South Africa. So we moved here when I was 2 years old. And so what's so interesting is like, I was born there, but I've spent the majority of my life here. So I love that question because I do feel like Oklahoma has inspired me and does have a subtle touch in my music. I kind of, as I grew up, I realized that like my sound is maybe a little bit different. I obviously, as you can see, I'm black. I'm blackity black. But as I grew up, I kind of was just like, you know what? Like, I'm not that I wouldn't want to, but like, I'm not necessarily an R&B artist. Like, you don't really get those like notes in like my music or whatever. Like, I had to come to terms with the fact that like, I actually do have a couple of country artists that I love a lot. I used to deny it, but I actually do have a heart for country. Very picky though on what type of country I listen to. And I've always really enjoyed like folk music or whatever. And whenever, you're asking that question, I realize that I think, a lot of that is the environment that I grew up in. I fully believe that if my family and I, if we would have moved to a different city or a different state, I think probably the essence of not just the essence of how I am as an artist, but like the music and the environment that I would have been around, I think my sound would probably be a little bit different, And so I think the environment that I have been in, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Edmond, all the cities that I've lived in, I think the way that that is translated into my music is that it gave me permission to be okay with the sound that I am, and the fact that, like, yeah, I may not be able to necessarily do all the runs like we hear from all these amazing R&B artists, but my voice is my voice, and the type of music is the type of music that I like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if, it has a little bit of an oaky little situation, that's okay. That's okay.
It's more than okay. It's everything right. And I love how you also have the roots of Zimbabwe and with those other genres and being selective with the type of music and genres and just everything, right? I think that speaks volumes to just being part of the global society is being selective and not just allowing anything into your spirit or into your motivation types space because we want to be very particular even if it's something that's new. So with that, let me ask you, what was that first song for you? Because usually I ask people, when did they fall in love with hip hop, but for you, I want you to tell me that first song, no matter the genre. What was that first song that indicated to you that, you know what, this is me, this is what I want to do too? What artist,
Man,
what music, what song was that?
that is such a good question. Man, there is one artist that comes to mind. Well, first of all, like, I grew up in church and I still very much am close to my faith. I am a believer. So I can already think about some worship songs that really captured my heart in middle school that really, I mean, artistry aside, I wouldn't say necessarily like inspired me as an artist, but really just like captured my heart. And back when I thought I was going to be a worship leader slash pastor, and back when I thought I was going to write Christian music, I was like, oh, there's a song by this band. I don't necessarily listen to this band anymore. There's a song by this band named Hillsong called Oceans that really captured my soul. Just the way that it sounded. It was very different. It kind of paved the way for more Christian worship bands to like experiment with that sound. And then, of course, growing up, like, I listened to CC Winans, Marvin Sapp, a little controversial now with Brother Sapp, but that's okay. That's all right. It's cool.
Close the doors. Close the
Right.
doors now.
Close the doors. Wild, wild. But
Right.
growing up, never would have made it. I literally heard that song for the first time when I was in elementary school, but I was like, yeah, I'm stronger. I'm wiser. Come on. But I think, listen, amazing song. If I think about it too much, I tear up because that song is powerful. And the fact that that song penetrated my heart at such a young age speaks volumes to him as an artist and him as a believer. We do need to pray for the brother, but aside from that, though, it's an amazing
Mhm.
song. But definitely, to answer your question, the first artist that left a mark on me, and I actually got in trouble for listening to her because I was way too young. I was way too young, excuse me, to be listening to her music. It was middle school. I remember my family and we were on vacation, and this song was playing in the store that we were in. I think we were in Texas. Should I give up, or should I just keep chasing pavements? And I was like, who is this person? And so I came home. This was back in middle school. I remember it was summer, 7th grade, no homework. I would spend like all day on the computer, and then I would hang out with my friends from church. It was a vibe. I looked her up and saw that she had just released an album called 21. This is Adele. When I heard Rolling in the Deep for the first time, I was like, who is this woman? I immediately went and watched interviews of her. There's an interview on YouTube where she broke down song by song. Obviously, this woman has grown. She was singing about love, her exes,
Mhm.
getting back at people. I was way too young to get into that. And I actually got in trouble because my mom was like, you have no reason to be listening to this music. But I still listened to her, though.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so Adele, I would say, obviously, I hate saying Rolling in the Deep because that's like one of her main songs, and there's so many better songs that she's written. Rolling in the Deep is a great song, but there's just more to her than just that song. But that was the song where I was just like, wow, like, that was when I was like, this is the type of artist I want to be. First of all, like we actually, my husband and I, we got to see her in concert a couple years ago. She's so herself, like does not try to keep up with appearances. Her music is so raw. Her lyricism is so powerful and so deep. And in my opinion, like she has her like radio hits, but some of the songs that they like didn't really play on the radio that did still become popular, you really
Mm-hmm.
have to pay attention to what she's saying. A lot of them are catchy, but if you actually sit down and listen to like not just her amazing voice, her vocals are insane, but her lyrics, it's so powerful. And I think that mixed with just like her personality and how she is and how she's taken some really painful circumstances in her life, um, and happy ones too, and like has put that to song. I think even at a young age, I mean, like I didn't have the language to, like kind of how I'm describing to you now. Like I didn't have that language when I was in middle school, but I was kind of like, this is the type of artist that I want to be. She's captivating. She's beautiful. She's hilarious. So funny.
Mm-hmm.
So funny. And just herself. And yeah, I was just deeply affected by her and like her vibe and everything that she's about. And of course, once I got to high school, once I got more grown, you better believe I wore out her albums. Still do. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love everything that you just said, right? From Marvin Sapp to Adele, and that song "Rolling in the Deep." One of the ways that I hear that song is in a New Orleans bounce type of a remix. They remix that into a bounce music. It's very traditional to the NOLA sound. But what stood out to me, because you're being a songwriter and just those words, right? And I try to teach this with my students about it's more than just the lyrics. It's more than just the words. It's an amazing power. And when you put together just a few words, like never would have made it, those 5 words can be so impactful and so soul stirring. That's the
Hmm.
beauty that I love about writing, and even the discourse when we talk about music. I mean, everything that you just shared, especially being able to not be able to express yourself when you were younger, but now being able to reflect back and being able to say and still listen to that music, still being able to be motivational and inspirational. How does that translate into your own songwriting? Like, how are
Mm.
you channeling those experiences into writing your songs and even into your screenwriting? I like to talk about the both. And you have a lot of inspiration and some great inspiration too. I'm right there with you with Adele and Marvin Sapp and CC Winans. So how does that resonate with your writing,
Mm.
with your art altogether?
Man, that is such a great question. I love talking about this. I think when it comes to, gospel artists and worship music that I still listen to, obviously all of that stuff is meant to be uplifting. And
Mm-hmm.
some of those songs, there's some worship music, for instance, the stuff they play on the radio. I typically don't really listen to the radio. I think sometimes there are even not in just worship music, but I think in music in general, specifically pop music sometimes, where I feel like the songs are really flat, like we're not really getting beneath the surface. And I think growing up, I remember coming into a point where I was like, because my first couple of projects it's Christian, they're Christian
Mm-hmm.
music, and so I remember thinking to myself like a lot of this music that we listen to, even some of the songs that we play in church, like they're very uplifting and very encouraging. And I definitely always had this like thing about how I want to encourage people, but the way I wanted to do it is I wanted to lead people into a greater intimacy with God at the time. And so I wanted to write music that was honest. I love gospel music. I love gospel artists because I feel like they are singing from the depths of their soul. Um, I can't remember the artist. Micah Sampley, I think that's his last name. I grew up listening to his song, Take My Life. And basically, it's a song about holiness and asking God to just completely take my life and make it a reflection of your goodness, of your holiness. And I was so young. And this really just speaks to the power of music, right? But I was so impacted by that song. Like, I loved that song. And so being older as a singer-songwriter, you know, what I took from worship music is there's some worship music, there are some artists that in order for them to lead people into God's presence, they use their own circumstances to be real and to be honest so that people can experience deep spirituality with God. And so I remember when I first started out, I said, you know what? I want to be a songwriter that is honest so that I can lead people to an even more honest place with God. Then when I got out of writing Christian music, fun fact, I didn't even think that I could write a secular song. That's what I called it at the time. And I remember the first song that I wrote that wasn't Christian, and I was like, oh, can write a little something something, you know. And I fully believe that we can encounter God in like all different types of music. It doesn't necessarily need to be Christian music or music in church or anything like that. And so as I started writing music that wasn't Christian, I realized that I want to tell stories. There's a couple songs that I've written that are simply just like stories, not necessarily I can relate with the narrative, but I'm painting a story for you. And a lot of my music, especially as I've gotten older, is about my to put into it simply my experiences in life. And I look at the artists that I listen to today. I look at Kendrick Lamar. I look at Adele. I look at even some country artists. Country music, actually, one of the things that is really interesting and amazing about country music is a lot of country music artists paint a story. That's what they do. Right. And people love that. And I love that. And so country music, that is something that's very amazing about country music is how a country music artist, even if it's a song about drinking beer on a tractor, you're listening to it and it's like, you know what? Yeah, I want to do the same thing. Come on. And so I say all that to say, I think from the very beginning, the biggest thing that I wanted to bring into my music was honesty. I'm never going to present myself in a way that is not true to who I am, period. And then translating into screenwriting, so I wrote and directed a short film. I'm currently working on another short film, kind of in that same vein of honesty. I want to do films that are impactful for people and that mean something. I'm not saying that a funny rom-com or a funny comedy can't mean something to you. I think those movies are intended to make you laugh. They're also intended to be a form of like escapism, you know, sitting down on the couch with a glass of wine, enjoying a movie, laughing. Like if you've had a really bad day or if you've had a really rough week at work, coming home, putting on a Netflix original, although some Netflix originals don't hit, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes I'm like, okay, Netflix, we dropped the ball with this one, but that's okay. That's all right. But I think movies that portray real circumstances, especially movies that you know are written based on the circumstances of the director or the writer, I think those movies are really impactful. And so I almost feel like it's the same thing with music. Like I want to present real circumstances. I want to be honest. I want to be real. And I think I think vulnerability and transparency is a big part of who I am. And in my music, I would definitely say I'm really vulnerable, perhaps more vulnerable than I am with making films, only because, well, first of all, I say making films. I've only written and directed one. So don't get it twisted. I'm still at the beginning of my journey, but I hope to do more. I think when it comes to, especially the film that I'm working on now, it's about a high school girl who begins to really struggle with her mental health. That is very much a part of my story. And so I would say that probably at some point we're going to get there where when someone watches a film by me, they're going to get a little piece of my life. Same thing with music. A lot of the music that I've written in adulthood is about heartache. And then actually the last song that I put out, which was a year or so ago, well, a year and a half ago, it's called Never Meant to Be. And in that song, instead of talking about the guy that hurt me and how dysfunctional he was, I'm admitting that that relationship, that fling should have never happened. And it's actually my fault. because I led you to a place that we should have never gone. I was the one that was actually borderline toxic, and I regret it, and I'm sorry, and I acknowledge the fact that I'm always, even if you get to a point of forgiveness, which I hope that these people have gotten to that point, I'm always going to be the villain in your story. That by far is the most vulnerable song I've ever written, because I'm admitting that I'm not perfect and that I've made some really devastating mistakes. And so that's vulnerability. That's honesty. I'm not writing this music acting like men have wronged me my entire life. No, I have also made mistakes that have really hurt people. So, yeah, I think I just really desire to be honest. And I think artists that I've listened to over the years that I feel like are real on a soul level really inspired me to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into what I do. So I'm very excited to like cultivate that more in films that I'll make in the future, because I really think that they'll be really impactful and speak to a lot of people too at the same time.
All of that brilliantly said, Evergreen. With that vulnerability and that honesty, that's probably the hardest thing to do, right? It would resonate with the audience, but in order to be honest and vulnerable with others, you have to be that with yourself in the mirror when nobody else is looking, and be able to unpack all of those things, to even be honest to say, I am toxic. I was the one that was wrong, or I did those. That's something that definitely needs to be learned, and teaching that through your music, through your screenwriting, as you continue to make more films, as you go along here. I'm excited to hear how you are, channeling all of this great energy, not just the good things of life, but the bad things, the negative, the in-betweens, to sit up there and create this story, this song that not only gets the numbers, but it also impacts in such a way that it changes people's minds. And I appreciate that wholeheartedly, because it is hard to be vulnerable. How is someone supposed to be vulnerable? Well, you can turn on an Evergreen song, or listen to one of your pieces of music, or even turn on one of your films and be able to learn that in real time. And then also asking you those questions. I appreciate your openness and being able to share those things, because that storytelling is definitely a pillar of hip hop, but it is for all genres and all music that help to give us our identity. And I think that's so important when it comes to identity, to keep up that tradition of sharing and giving this plot of, the good, the bad, the in between, and then the conclusion at the end. But it's still a journey, right? That
Yeah.
journey of it all. So I really like everything about that, and really excited. Definitely tuning in as you continue to grow your artistic career.
Thank you.
Now, thank you, my dear. I really appreciate this. So, that genre fluidity, right? So you move through different types of genres with ease, right? You have not in one stance that we have discussed have you been able to maintain focus on one genre. So you have this fluidity when it comes to genre. So do you have like a process where you're blending these styles that helps you to stay true to your voice? Like there may be something that is, that goes on in your brain that helps you to process all of these genres. Maybe it's something that you haven't stopped to reflect. But thinking of that, how do all of these styles help you to stay true to your voice?
It's funny because as you started talking, I was like, no. And what I mean by no is that I remember, this is the perfect way for me to explain it. Senior year of college, this was around the time that I actually started to write different types of music, not just worship music, because I really thought that like I only had the ability to write Christian music. And then honestly, it was an experiment. I was like, well, let me just see if I can write something that's not necessarily Christian or worship music or even like faith based. And when I did, and when I started, that was the year that I started gigging here in Oklahoma City. And when I saw that people liked the song, it's called Man and His Guitar. When I saw that people liked the song and were vibing with the song, I was like, oh, so let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. And later on, I would end up, that's where I got to the real vulnerability of like writing about like my life channeling the stuff that was going on in my life at the time. So really what happened in college around that time where I started to experiment, when I started to realize that I had a lot of potential. I remember I went to a Christian university. I was sitting in chapel, and this man was talking about your journey and your calling and stuff, and I felt like God said, be okay with not fitting into a box. And I feel like I instantly knew what God meant. I felt like what God was saying was, be okay with being multifaceted. Because I think oftentimes we do want to be put in a certain category as an artist, of course. And I think there's nothing wrong with having a specific genre in music. I have a friend who's a pop artist here in Oklahoma City, and she says that how she describes her music is that she writes cinematic pop. She does that, and she does that so well. Yeah, her name is Yasmin. She's incredible. Love her to
Shout out to
death.
Yasmin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real.
Shout out.
She's so good.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with writing within a specific genre. I think for me personally, and it honestly, as you're talking, it makes a lot of sense why my music taste is literally kind of all over the place. Is because that's kind of how I am. When I start to write a song, I'm not necessarily thinking about, what is the genre of this song? It's more of just, what am I feeling? Where is the inspiration coming from, and what is the best way I can put this into words, and like what feels good on the piano. And so when God told me, be okay with being multifaceted, one of the things that I felt like he also highlighted in that was be okay with not necessarily fitting in a specific box. What's interesting is, Evrgreen, I wasn't always identified as Evrgreen. My old artist name used to be my actual name, which was Tembi Joy. And last year, I looked at my music as a whole, and I was like, I am a very joyful person. Like, I like to laugh. A lot of people tell me that I'm funny. I believe joy is an eternal feeling. Wouldn't even say it's a feeling. It's something. It's a strength, it's powerful, it's spiritual. No matter what's going on in life, if you're joyful, that can't be moved or taken away by circumstance. But a lot of my music is real. Like, I've been through some really rough stuff, and if you put on my old music, aside from the song that I wrote about my husband, you're not going to get a joyful vibe. So I was like, I really feel like in this next stage of my life, I want to have a name that I feel like encompasses who I am as an artist. And so I changed to Evrgreen because one day, like, the word just came to me, and I was like, well, let me look this up. I'll never forget, because I was at a gas station with my husband, and he got into the car, and I was like, what do you think of the word evergreen? And he was like, I like that. And I looked it up. Evergreen trees, we use those type of trees, for Christmas trees. And in general, those trees are able to sustain every environment in every season. Doesn't matter if it's summer, winter, spring, or fall. You're always going to see an evergreen tree. And I really resonated with that, because I was like, you know what? In every season of my life, I want to yield something. I want there to be fruit in some way, even in seasons when I'm struggling. And I feel like my music, you can really see what has come out of these painful circumstances. And so with that being said, I feel like that's more the focus for me versus trying to fit in a certain genre. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think the gift that God has put inside of me, I think sometimes, and it is kind of unfortunate, because some people ask me, like, so what kind of music do you do? Every time someone asks me that, I'm always like, it's a blend of things. Here's the link, you can check it out. I think just with God's plan and like the gifts that God's given me, I just think it's different. And it doesn't necessarily fit in a box. It's kind of just this multifaceted blend of all these different colors, and I just take a blank canvas and pick whatever color I feel like needs to be on the canvas, and I mix different colors together. Sometimes I have to restart. But at the end of the day, that piece of art is mine, and it's real and it's authentic. And even if it's not like other people's music or whatever, or movies, I'm staying true to myself. And so I feel like that's more important than finding a genre. I mean, don't get me wrong, like my inspirations has been, pop music. I have very specific pop artists that I listen to, country music, hip hop, rap. Um, I think hip hop and rap, I know some people think that they're the same. I think for me, they're both a little bit different. Um, and so I have all of this inspiration from all these different things. And I think I just kind of take all of that and kind of make it my own. And that's what's important to me. And so that's kind of been my focus when it comes to how I approach a song. And I believe that's also going to be my focus in how I'll approach writing my music, writing films and stuff in the future.
Yeah, and when you were saying that, I was thinking about Beyonce. I was thinking about Kendrick Lamar and Post Malone and Bad Bunny and how they are, restructuring what it means to be in a genre. For Beyonce, for example, to go from, R&B pop and then to have a whole country album, a country
Yeah.
movement even. I remember seeing something on social media where this country western store, who the owner may not be a Beyonce fan, but was so thankful to Beyonce because she was able to shift the culture when it came to this genre embrace, and not just saying only one type of person can do one type of music. She's definitely the epitome of what it means to have that genre fluidity. Because I believe the next act of hers, she's going to be looking at rock and roll. I'm guessing, but at the same token, she's able to seamlessly, right,
Yeah.
and such with emphasis and with artistry to present different genres. Kendrick Lamar, when you were speaking, I was thinking about the song "Mother I Sober" and how he talks about,
Oh, I was about
right.
to bring up that song. I listened to that song religiously over and over again when I wrote my movie Only Way Out. I cried. Girl, I'm so happy you brought that up because literally I was going to bring that song up at some point. Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Yes, 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 because when the piano first starts, and I think I saw you playing piano too on one of your platforms. When the piano first starts, and then there's this kind of dull beat that goes along with it, and then he starts into the spoken word, and again, that vulnerability. He's teaching people to embrace their mental health issues and create a mental health journey instead of just getting on the microphone and just rapping and going into the trends of what's going to get the numbers, what's going to get people moving. He took the time in that song and really on that album, even with United in Grief, that he wants you to take this journey through his mind and his soul and to channel the shortcomings of what happened with him, and with all the different abuse that occurred and his mom trying to get him to say something that he didn't experience, but also to help him express what actually happened. That's another artist like yourself that is taking that vulnerability and creating something, synthesizing, creating something new. And that's what
Yeah.
this world that we live in needs, is someone to take the old and their own experiences, synthesize it all to create something new. So those type of songs, and even Post Malone, he can go seamlessly through different genres as well. And there are so many others. I think about Bad Bunny, where when he first started, and I love Bad Bunny's story, where he was first a grocery store bagger. He used to bag groceries before he actually became an artist, and then he went from doing the more hip hop rap type Latin, and then segued into this R&B pop singer, world renowned. And his style has changed, right? His
Yeah.
style has definitely changed, but at the same time, right, being able to hone in on self. And it's just
Mm,
like you said, Evergreen, being unmoved and giving so much of yourself into these songs so that you're proud of it, not by what the audience gives. Like, I don't. From what I'm hearing from you, is that you're not gauging the success of your music by how many people download it. The success was when you placed it for others to hear. That's where the success comes. I tell my students too that you have to be so confident about what you say and what you write and what you share, that the audience applause is just extra.
Yeah.
That's just something that's additional to the satisfaction of putting together a passage or something shared, and then that audience giving you that applause is just extra. So definitely with those pieces. And I love also that people like Yasmin, and I'm sure your other friends and family, like you are also being around others that are different. And I think that's also important, not just music and movies, but in life, to open yourself up to being around different people so that not only can you learn from them, they can learn from you, and then creating something new. And all of that being so vitally important, especially when we're looking at creating movies and putting this music into motion. I think all of that is very crucial. Now, let's ask another question there, Evergreen. When people look back at Evergreen years from now, what do you want them to say about your artistry and your impact?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is probably my favorite question. I want years from now, I'm a dreamer. So whether, in my mind, I'm like, of course, I'd love to win. Now do films, so I'd love to win an Oscar or something crazy. Or man, I
You
love.
will.
Hey,
You will.
hey, I've had a lot of people over the years that have spoken into me, and I really appreciate that, because it's one thing to have a dream. It's another thing for people to actually be like, yeah, that's doable. I think at the end of the day, man, years from now, I want people to listen to my music and be so deeply impacted by it, by my authenticity and the rawness of it. And I want people to be like, wow, she crafted this music from such an honest place. And I feel that in the literal depths of my soul. That's what I want. Like, I have, man, and this is kind of going back to the TikTok thing I said about my reluctancy to do TikTok, is I'm not, I would love to grow my audience like my friend did on TikTok. I'd love, especially someday when I start working on my album and I put out music under my new artist name, Evrgreen. Of course, I'm going to want people to listen to it, and to gain an audience of some kind. But I have no desire to be an artist that writes for the 30-second minute TikTok sounds. I want to be an artist that is real and an artist that moves you. And so for years and years to come, I hope people listen to my music and feel that. Feel the rawness of it. Know that I wrote this from an authentic place. Even if this narrative that I'm writing about doesn't necessarily portray my life, knowing that it came from someplace real, knowing that that experience must have impacted me in some way, or that person's story, I want them to feel that. I want them to feel that through how I sing, the lyrics, the music, like even how I approach the piano is very intentional. And that sometimes can also trip me up, because like sometimes I may have the words, but then like the piano doesn't sound right. And so like I will spend a lot of time making sure the piano and the words vibe together. So I'm very a bit of perfectionist when it comes to that, but it's all because of what I just said. I want people to feel it. I want them to feel it to the point to where maybe they're able to be honest with themselves about something. Maybe they don't feel so alone anymore, or maybe it's just a different type of vibe. You know what I mean? Like music that they can actually feel versus just like, those songs that you belt out on the radio or whatever. Like maybe it just introduces them to a different vibe and it brings them to like a different place, whether they're listeners or whether they're actually artists as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me say that your music is doing that now and will continue to do so for sure.
Thank you.
So with that said, I want to ask you one more question. Mm-hmm. I want to talk more about your music. I want to honor your time, but I want to hear more about your music. So I want you to select a song, one of those songs of yours that feels most like you, the one that really captures who you are. Tell us the name of the song and tell us about how this captures the essence of Evrgreen.
I already know. It's a song of mine that actually didn't do very well at all. It's called You. So my previous artist name was Tembi Joy, so THEMBI Joy. And I feel like that, and I think it definitely has, it may not necessarily fit the Evrgreen vibe, because I do plan on experimenting more with like the acoustic guitar and stuff like that. But it carries the same thing of like, I took a really painful circumstance. So pandemic happened. I moved back to Oklahoma City. I was in Tennessee for a while to do an internship. I actually ended up getting really sick due to the heavy workload. And that came out of that came a diagnosis of mine. So I actually have bipolar 1, as do a lot of creative people, unfortunately. A lot of us have mood disorders, or even just mental stuff. I don't know why, but we're just the ones, unfortunately. So I moved back here. I ran into an old friend. He invited me to hang out with some of his friends. Very charismatic guy, loved God, attractive, So I started to hang out with him, had feelings for him, and I was kind of at war with myself because I knew, one, that he didn't have feelings for me, like I knew that. And two, like we were close. We were best buds. He would always vent to me about girls that he was dating, girls that were interested in him, trying to figure out like kind of like who he wants to be with and everything. So like in my mind, I knew that we're not going to be together. But he was kind of just really irresistible to me, like when it came to his personality and stuff. Long story short, one night we're on the phone, and I actually went on a date with a friend of mine at the time. That didn't really work out, but it's fine. We're still friends and everything. And I was telling him about it, and he was just like, honestly, like, I just can't think of anyone that's like good enough for you, like not even me. And I was like, I feel like you're the one guy that's worth my time. He was so shook. We got off the phone. He didn't talk to me for months. I confronted him at a church event. And he was like, honestly, when you said that, that was just something that I didn't want to hear. And I said, so you got mad at me for saying how I felt? And he was like, honestly, I don't want to talk about this. I said, all right. So tell me why. I went home, drank 2 heavily poured glasses of wine, wrote this song, and literally wrote myself out of the hurt that I felt. I wasn't in love with the guy. I just was very upset at the fact that like you were almost punishing me for telling you how I felt about you. And I remember talking to one of my good guy friends, and I was like, be honest with me, like, were my actions, like, was I giving off, like, a crazy vibe, like, whatever? And he was like, no, I just think that he's immature. So You is about falling for someone that you know is dysfunctional, knowing that you shouldn't fall for them, knowing that you should just distance yourself from them or just get out of your headspace. But because you're just drawn to them, you do. And I literally like, that is the song that I'm the most proud of. I actually do plan on re-recording that song and making it a little bit different sound-wise. And so that's the song that I'm the most proud of. It did not do very well. Like anytime I look at my stats, it's always at the bottom. But I almost don't care. Because to me, I'm proud of the process. I'm proud of the fact that out of writing that song, I was able to forgive him and move on. And yeah, I think that is the song that I feel like really encompasses me as an artist, even though, when I wrote that, I was Tembi Joy and I'm now Evrgreen. No matter what, that is the essence of who I am. I took a circumstance, recognized the shame of I fell for this person, even though I really shouldn't have, having grace for myself, being mad at him for how he treated me, and then in return, forgiving him because love covers a multitude of sins, right? Looking back now, was he sinful towards me? No, but I'm dramatic. So that was the line that I put in the song, period. And yeah, I love it. I love that song. That is my favorite song I think I've written. And will always be so proud of it. Always.
As you should. The process of channeling that energy into something so powerful, I think that part speaks so strongly to me. One of the things we learn about in literature, do you know the sign, keep calm and carry on? So this is something I learned in my second master's degree. When we talked about that particular time, that actual message is from the 1700s. A librarian found that and had dusted it off, and because it was for, and I can't speak specifically to the history, but it actually showcased this message from hundreds of years ago to now being something we see mainstream. So I'm very confident, Evergreen, that that song "You" is going to have a resurgence, whether it is the original Thunder Destroy version of it or the Evergreen version or in the 10-year version from now. You are creating this repository, this legacy of music that can change because it changed too. And we can't take away that process. And I really like too when you talk about the mental health struggle that most artists have, right? You know, most comedians come from a very despondent place. And that's part of the journey. But being able to share that with the audience is what's most powerful and graceful, that the audience even has the opportunity to have access to it. Because there's one thing that I know that God wants for us to share is our light. He never wants us to keep our light hidden. He wants us to show our light and share that with the world. And so, Evergreen, you are doing that in the most amazing way. I am so thankful to have you on today's podcast. And I also would like to have an open invitation for you to come back. Hopefully, okay, good. Because you have a lot to share, and I want to hear it. And I know the hip hop family and everyone around the world will benefit from your journey of becoming exactly who you are meant to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd love to come back. I'm already there, honestly. Thank you so much for having me. I never get tired of sharing not just what I'm about, but like also just my thoughts on creativity and how I approach what I do. And I really appreciate it. You know, like I don't necessarily have a really big following. And I think at the time, you know, you mentioned something about caring more about the impact versus like the numbers. And it actually took me a really long time to get out of that headspace. And so you said that, and I was like, oh, that's new to me. And so thank you so much for saying that, because that's just a reminder for myself. But then also, like, I really do believe in God's timing. And I believe in how sometimes he puts you in seasons of hiddenness because you may not necessarily be ready for the blessing, for the impact, for the opportunities that will come your way. And so, I'm just starting off on TikTok. I just started actually posting active videos on my YouTube almost a year ago. But people like you and just random folks that really are impacted by my 30-second covers on YouTube, or, that people that come to, people that I meet when I like gig in these coffee shops and stuff that are really impacted by my music. I really do believe that it's platforms like this where you hold space for people to talk about what they do. Not only does that impact them on a real like cellular level, but it also, you're creating room for people like me who still sees themselves as just a young, small local artist in Oklahoma City, as a gateway for the future. So thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. I love your vibe. You're gorgeous. Thank you so much for giving me and many people the space just to share their essence, where they're from, where they want to go, and what have you. So thank you.
You're welcome. And to add to that, I had shared with another guest something I saw on social media, where social media has people gaslit, thinking that 10 likes isn't anything. But imagine getting judged by 10 people, right? Puts that in perspective. But I want to give you the last word, though, Evergreen. What do you want for future artists to focus on as they're putting together their music, their writing, their experiments? What's one thing, or maybe two things, that you would like to impart to the audience to ensure that they can stay in tune with their path of success?
I want future artists to focus on staying true to themselves, not selling out their identity for the sake of being promised that if they present themselves in a different way, then they'll gain a bigger audience. More than anything, people want to see the real you, the funny you, the sad you. They want to hear what you have to say through your music. And even though people may love this like fake version of you, or you just writing songs about whatever because your label told you to do that, or because you know that like, oh, this is the magic formula to success. I believe at the end of the day, you're never going to be content with yourself because you know that you're not presenting yourself in a real way, and you'll feel like a fraud. So keeping it real, I think, is so important, not just for your career, but also for yourself, for your psyche. And then be authentic. Sorry, I'm in Oklahoma and it's Saturday at noon and they're testing the tornado sirens. If you can hear that, I'm so sorry. Crazy. That's Oklahoma for you. We got a lot of naders. That's what they call them. Tornadoes, naders here.
Yeah, y'all do.
I think the second thing would be, right, honestly, people, vulnerability is so refreshing to people. It may be scary to share that you've made a mistake, to put that into words, to perform that live for people, to put it on streaming services where anybody anywhere can listen to it. But people want that. And people actually crave that more than anything. People want to be moved. That's why we listen to music. Not only do we listen to music to have a great time, to dance, to belt in our cars or whatever. We also listen to music to feel. And when you write something that makes someone feel, it leaves a lasting impression on their soul. So keep it real and write honestly. Even if you don't necessarily feel comfortable writing about you, channel that honest place within you and it'll impact people. So yeah.
Oh, from Evergreen herself, thank you so much for your time. Hip Hop Scholar family, we'll see you on the next one. Y'all take care.